All right. Well, kind of setting up a little bit of a background. We both grew up in the outskirts of Chattanooga, but we never met until Killer Nashville. To give everybody an idea of where you come from, can you kind of just start in Tennessee and tell me a little bit about your trajectory?
Yeah, I grew up in Tennessee after my father was transferred by DuPont from Buffalo, New York to
Oh,
Chattanooga.
DuPont.
Yeah, did your dad?
DuPont. Yeah, well, I had family who worked at DuPont, so
Yeah,
it
DuPont
was a
in
great
Chattanooga.
employer.
Yeah. And we lived up on Signal Mountain, Tennessee. It was a bit of a cultural shock for a 10-year-old kid from Buffalo, New York, to come down to Chattanooga, Tennessee. But it was fun. It was a great place to grow up. A lot of woods, a lot of Boy Scout trips. And I was very fortunate that I had one really great teacher in junior high school. I guess you'd call it middle school now. But she recognized my writing talent for the school newspaper. And also, she was my seventh grade English teacher. And she scribbled in the margins of my papers, "You will make your living as a writer someday." And when
Wow.
she said that to me, it's like, wow, because I'd been reading Mad Magazine, watching Rocky and Bullwinkle, developing a sense of humor to deal with the bullies who were picking on me in seventh grade. And so when she said that, the next year, when I had to write the "What do you want to be when you grow up" essay that we all had to write almost every year, I said I wanted to be a comedian or a writer. And from that point on, I went to Notre Dame High School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, had some great teachers there, worked on the school newspaper, acted in all the plays. Then I went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where my degree was in communication. So I'm writing all the time, journalism, advertising, broadcasting. But I spent all my time acting in plays at the Clarence Brown Theater in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I actually worked as the marketing director for the theater for 2 years. And then a lot of my buddies and we all got our Actors Equity Union cards through the Clarence Brown Company in Knoxville and began this great pilgrimage to New York City. So I flew to New York when I was 24 years old. I had 7 suitcases and a typewriter because you could take 8 pieces of luggage on an airplane for free back then. I had $1,000 to my name and a one-way ticket to New York. And I came here to be a comedian or a writer.
What'd your parents think of it?
My mom, who is Greek, said, "Go, do it. If you don't do it now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." My father, who was a chemical engineer for DuPont and had that sort of engineering, "this is what we are doing" kind of mentality, he just thought that was just crazy. Just what do you think you're doing? So I think it was my mom was more encouraging. And, those first years were very tough because you got $1,000 and last month rent on this mouse infested apartment I found was $600 that they wanted in cash. So I had 2/3 of my net worth in my pocket that day walking across town, and I knew that was the day I was going to get mugged. And I wasn't. So you're starting out and you get a job. I got a job typing, but I started doing improvisational comedy, which didn't pay anything, but was a great showcase. And that led to some agents. I got to perform on stage. Bruce Willis was in our troupe before he became Bruce Willis. Kathy Kinney, who ended up on the Drew Carey show, was in our troupe. Robin Williams would jump on stage with us, and agents did come, and I got to audition for a lot of commercials. And during that time, I also wrote for Jim Henson and the Muppets. I started out writing for Dial a Muppet, which was, I just said, I want to, and this is my encouragement to all you writers, just whatever you can do to write, if someone will pay you just a little bit. So I got to write for Dial a Muppets, which were these 976 numbers you'd call up and the Muppets would talk to you for like, I don't know, it was a minute or whatever. And those were big things in New York in the 80s, these 976 numbers, they charged you, X money for those. And I did a good job on that. So Jim Henson said, "Well, why don't you work on this TV show called The Little Muppet Monsters," which I did a couple episodes of that. At the same time, my buddy Ronnie Venable and I from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, we've done a lot of plays together. We were doing a stand-up act together, but we're really getting tired of the whole comedy club scene. So we wrote a made-for-TV movie called The Christmas Gift. And we didn't know it at the time, but the first thing we ever wrote, not only did it get bought by somebody, but it actually got produced, and it actually was on CBS television starring John Denver way back in 1986. I think we created.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's been on every year. I would think we created the whole genre of big city person comes to small town, finds love in the true meaning of life genre. That was one of the first ones done back in 1986 about an architect who goes to this small town to turn it into a ski resort, put condos up, but finds out that everybody in the town believes in Santa Claus and has a change of heart and finds love again. So that was fun. And after I did that for a while, I did that for like 5 years, just looking for any writing job I could get. My late wife encouraged me to find a job where I could be creative all day because she thought when we got married, I would become a banker, because that's where my day job was, who did comedy as a hobby. And I sort of looked around again, sent out a lot of resumes, and I eventually landed a job writing radio and television commercials at J. Walter Thompson Advertising. And my first boss in advertising was James Patterson, who would quit advertising, of course, and go on to become the best-selling author in the history of authors. And that's why if you look, you see my name really small under his name. We've done 36 books together now, because he was my inspiration to quit advertising and start a second career.
Good for him.
Yeah.
So if you were going to talk about building a brand building promotion for yourself, trajectory for advising writers, basically you've just summed it up in saying, do whatever you can.
When you're getting started, yes, do whatever you can. Every experience is good experience. I once talked to R.L. Stine, and I think I remember this correctly. And he had a very similar trajectory a little bit before me. He was doing all that kind of fun writing in college at Ohio State, and he moved to New York. And some of his first jobs were, when you get a coloring book and there's a caption down beneath some of the pictures in the coloring book, R.L. Stine wrote a couple of those, and he got paid like $1 a line. So you do anything you can. And that's just to get started and to learn your craft, because I spent 4 years being summarily rejected. When I quit advertising to write books, I wrote a book a year for 4 years, and all of them were rejected. And the first one kept getting rejected, and I kept rewriting. I kept going, I can fix that, because I'm an improv guy. I can do anything. And now so used to advertising where the client said, that stinks. I can make it smell better. Don't worry. I can change that 1 or 2 lines. I know we can fix that. So I was doing that. And I finally read an article in Writer's Digest. It was one of those kind of round tables of agents and editors. And an agent in this article said, at some point in your career, you have to decide, do you want to be a writer, or do you want to write one book? Because some people have like a memoir they want to write. They want to write their life story. That's the one story they have that they really want to tell. But I wanted to be a writer. And this guy said, well, that means by definition, you're going to write more than one book. If you want to be a writer as a career, that means you're going to write one book and then another book. So put that first book away, quit rewriting it, and write your second book. And so I did that, and it was rejected by everybody. Then I said, all right, I'll write a third book. And it was rejected by everybody. And then finally, I sort of analyzed, what did James Patterson do? Because I knew him when he was in advertising. He had written and published about 12 books. In fact, his very first book, a little known novel called The Thomas Berryman Number, won the Edgar, his best first mystery. But it wasn't until he started writing the Alex Cross books that he became wildly successful. So I said, all right, he named all those after lines from fairy tale or nursery rhymes, like Along Came a Spider, Kiss the Girls. And he had a sleuth, a continuing character. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I had the names of my books before I had anything else. The first book was going to be called Tilt-A-Whirl. The second book was going to be called Mad Mouse.
Whack-a-mole.
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 Hellhole, Mind Scrambler, Rolling Thunder. And I think the last one was called Free Fall, I think. And there's one called Ring Toss, which is a short story. And I had all those. And then I kind of did, and this might be good for writers, I sort of analyzed the market, because that's what we did. If you're writing commercials for Burger King, you have to say, well, what's McDonald's doing and what can I do that could be different? So I'm a big lover of mystery. So I read all the Michael Connelly and the Robert Grace, all the kind of hard-boiled detective who had a bottle of booze in their lower drawer of their desk, and their partner had died and they were divorced because they were married to the job. And once, I think I said this at Killer Nashville, and Michael Connelly said, he was there too with us. He said, That worked pretty good for me. I thought, I know. That's what I didn't want to do because you were always doing such a great job of that. So what can I do? So I flipped the script. I created a character who was the exact opposite of all those kind of noir detectives. I created an overgrown Boy Scout who lived by a code of honor. He would not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. But the thinking said, I have to come up with something that no one's done yet, or that's unexpected. It's a new twist. And so that's how I created the character of John Seapack. And then I realized he's kind of like Sherlock Holmes, that he'd be very annoying to listen to if he was narrating the story. So I had to create my own Watson, a sidekick. And I created this kind of wisecracking young cop who's an auxiliary cop who only works for get some beer money, and because he thinks girls are going to like seeing him wearing a hat that says police. So that's how my first mystery, I wrote that, and that was the first one that got sold.
And so you've got this great series going for adults, and suddenly you go to kids.
Yeah,
So
I wrote for kids.
what caused you to switch, or were you writing for kids at the same time, or how's
No,
that?
it was actually a major switch. I have like 24 nieces and nephews, and at the time they were all under the age of 18. And they said, Uncle Chris, can we read your books? No, there's a few F-bombs being thrown around. There's a lot of adult situations. And at the time, my agent at the time, there was some editor who was looking for ghost stories for middle grade readers, kids ages 8 to 12. And my agent, that third book I wrote that got rejected from everybody was a ghost story. So my agent said, well, Chris wrote a ghost story, but it's not for middle grade readers. And the editor said, well, if the story's any good, we can turn it into one. So he read my third book, which was 110,000 words long, said, this would be a great book for middle grade readers. You just got to get rid of the adult situations, the adult language, and cut it down to like 50,000 words. And my agent said, do you want to do that? And that's like cutting 60,000 words out. That's like, and by the time I wrote that third book, I'd already spent a year working on it. So I'm going to have to spend another year on it. But my nieces and nephews, they really wanted to read something. So I said, I'm going to do it. And it was in the process of doing that. And what I did, and I always recommend that you get to know, if you're going to try a new category, get to know it a little bit, read a bunch of books. So I started reading a lot of books for 8 to 12-year-olds. I said, maybe I can do this, put in a couple of fart jokes here and there. There's an irreverence. The kids have got to be in charge of the story. They've got to be the ones solving whatever the mystery is. And I remember I read Carl Hyacins written for that age group, Hoot, and there's a great book called Holes by Louis Sacker. I read those, and they helped me get in the sense. And as I wrote, I was tapping back into that Mad Magazine 12-year-old kid that I used to be. And I was having such a blast too. And I said, maybe I should be doing this. And we wrote it. We turned it into that editor who was looking for middle grade books. But his boss no longer was looking for ghost stories. And so it died once again. But fortunately, we don't have kids. My wife and I don't have any kids, but we borrowed two from our friends, Kath and Dave, who had kids who were like 9 and 10. And they loved this book. They read the manuscript, the draft of it. And they were running around their church going, we read the best book. We read the best book. And it turns out a member of their congregation happens to be the head of the children's department at HarperCollins. And she hears these two kids raving about some new book. And my buddy Dave is a fire chief here in New York City, and he's rather gregarious and not shy. Said, oh yeah, my buddy. In fact, he was one of the inspirations for CPAC, the character of CPAC. He said, oh yeah, my buddy Chris wrote the best book. The kids loved it more than anything they ever read. And so this president of HarperCollins Children's interviewed the two kids. And she wanted to talk to me about it. And my agent then called up one of his friends he knew at Random House who does children's books and says, HarperCollins is interested in this thing my guy Chris wrote. And we got an offer from both houses. And Random House had a 2-book offer. And that's how I got started writing for kids. HarperCollins, that editor who we weren't able to work with, liked it so much, he said, could you do something for me? And that's how my series Riley Mack and the Other Troublemakers started, was with her. And I did 4 ghost stories for Random House. James Patterson, I went down to teach at his son's school. And if you're writing for kids, you want to do a lot of school visits. It helps book sales. It also helps you keep in touch with the kids who are going to be in your audience. And so the Palm Beach Day Academy, where James Patterson's son was going to school, wanted me to come because they had heard that I'd used improvisational comedy, and their kids at the Palm Beach Day Academy were so success oriented. They wanted them to loosen up a little bit. So they had me come in and do my improv show. And I think Jack Patterson went home and said to Jim, I call him Jim because that's what we call him in advertising, that guy Chris Grabenstein's pretty funny. And they just happened to have their book fair the same night that I was there. So they invited me to come. James Patterson was the guest speaker. I sat down in the front row with his wife, Sue, who used to work at J. Walter Thompson too. I think Jim remembered, oh yeah, Chris was a pretty decent guy. He was pretty talented and he was easy to work with because that's Jim's criteria. It's like life's too short. Advertising was such a royal pain, and publishing can sometimes be, that he just wanted co-authors who were good at what they did and we're not prima donnas and we're not divas and just did it for fun. We have a good time and we'll do the next one. So that's how I got started writing books with James Patterson. He had me audition on the 5th book in one of his other series, and that went well. And then we did iFunny, and then we did 6 books in that. And while we were working on iFunny, the Treasure Hunters thing came up. We did 9 books, and we've done 3 dozen books together now.
How do you find the time?
It's that old advertising discipline, you know. Literally, I tell people, they get shocked when I tell them every commercial you saw of mine that made it to air, I probably wrote between 100 and 300 scripts that died. Either my associate creative director, my creative director, my executive creative director, the marketing people, the account people, the sales people, somebody killed it. Could have been the president of Miller Brewing Company. Somebody killed it. And you just get used to, all right, there's another idea. There's another idea. And you develop a discipline of, the Brits call it bum glue, where you sit down every day for a prescribed period of time and you write. And I do that every day. I try to write 2,000 new words every day. And I start the day going over the 2,000 words I wrote the day before, basically to get back into the zone, do a little bit light editing on those. And then that helps me, okay, I remember and this is what's going to happen next. And then what someone wrote, when you know what's going to happen next, that's when you should stop writing for the day. You should just like walk away. And for me, it's 2,000 words. And I usually start getting a little fatigued at that point too.
That's a lot of words. And is that like the adamant goal, 2,000 every day before I stop?
Yes, if I'm in a groove, if I'm like traveling or I've got like copy editing that needs to be taken care of or lots of school visits, then I might do 1,000. But I picked that up. One of the best books I ever read about writing was Stephen King's On Writing, a memoir of the craft, where he writes about his story. And then the middle part, he sort of blocks out how you can write, because I never thought I could write. You know, those first adult books were 70, 80, 90,000 words long. And I was writing commercials. Those are 70 words. If you talk wall to wall in a 30-second commercial, which you never want to do, you've got 70 words to play with. So the idea of writing something with all those different characters and things, but Stephen King really breaks it down nicely, where he does the analogy of building a house, where if you come every day and put one brick down, make sure it's level, plumb, and square, come back the next day, put down the brick next to it, make sure it's level, plumb, and square. If you do that consistently for 5 days, you'll have 1 row. Then before long, you'll have a wall. After that, you'll have 4 walls, and then you'll figure out how to put a roof on it.
Do you, when you were writing your adult books, your grown-up books, when you were at Killer Nashville, was that pre-children's books, or were you doing things concurrently?
I know during the early days of my children's books, I was writing CPAC and my ghost stories at the same time. And it wasn't until Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library came out in 2013 that all this I think it was like my 20th or my 23rd book. And I remember going to a festival in Decatur, Georgia, and they said, here he is, debut author, Chris Grabenstein, because Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library was the first book anyone had really heard of. The Tilt-A-Whirl won a bunch of awards, and some of the ghost stories won some of the mystery awards, the Agathas and Anthony Awards and things like that. So within the mystery community, the books were well known. But up to that point, that was when and the Patterson books, you become a bestseller. Just about anything with his name on it, you're going to be in the bestseller list. And so my first bestsellers were with him. my first #1 bestseller was I Funny with him. And but Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library was the first book with only my name on the cover to make it to the top 10 of the New York Times list.
Now, you hear a lot of people saying you have to pick and choose between being a middle school author or an adult author, a grown-up author, or does it all just fall under the Chris brand? I mean, can you do it all?
I probably could do it all. I would have to pull back a little bit. I would have to pull back on how many middle grade books I'm doing. And my wife and I just sold a series that's going to be younger than middle grade. It's going to be in that.
Oh, I saw that. My daughter actually came to me and showed me it's something like I Know or something like that.
No is all I know. That's a picture book. So that's
Okay.
even younger. That's
Yeah.
like 3
Yeah.
to 6. Now we've got a new series that we're going to be starting
Yep.
2024 for the sort of like the 6 to 8-year-old, like kindergarten through 2nd grade. Then we'll pick them up with the middle school, because my middle grade books are really, now middle grade has been subdivided almost into 2 groups. There's upper elementary, which is what I write for mostly. I mean, most of my books are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders. 5th grade's like my sweet spot. I get some 7th graders, but by the time they get to 7th and 8th grade, they're looking for something a little bit more challenging. My ghost stories, because they were so dark, at least the first couple ones were, they probably still would appeal to 7th and 8th graders. So it's really interesting. There's a whole substrata of writing for children. When I first started writing for children, my agent and I both kept saying, I'm writing YA. Because I've been writing for grown-ups, for YA, young adult, I'm writing YA. And my editor said, no, you're writing middle grade. And I would keep saying, I'm writing YA. He's like, no, you're writing middle grade. And I said, well, what's the difference? So here's a tip that I was given. What's the difference between YA and middle grade? In middle grade books, the boys and girls like each other, but they don't like each other. So you're basically writing before the hormones kick in.
So how is writing for children different? Is it just you are where they are? Is that really what it is?
Yeah,
Like
you really have
hormones, post hormones,
you have to really tap in.
serious hormones.
You have to tap in to your own memories. I actually wrote an essay about how to write for middle grade readers in the collection that Mystery Writers of America put together about how to write mysteries. That's a really good resource book. It's got like, I think Lee Child edited it, and it's got like 50, I don't know, maybe 100 essays in there about almost every subgenre of mystery. And one of the things I say, what you have to do is tap into how you felt when you were that age. So I listened to music by the Monkees, because the Monkees were big when I was.
Hey, we're the Monkees.
I have pictures from me from 5th and 6th grade. I've got my old junior high school yearbook, and I look how miserable I was trying to play football because that's what my father wanted me to do. How happy I was working for the school newspaper because that's what I might have actually had some talent doing. So you remember those feelings, but kids today do not want to read old people's stories about what they did when they, oh, I raided a slumber party when I was in the 5th grade. I don't know. So the example I use is, if you were a kid in 6th grade and you were called in my day to the chalkboard to do an answer for something you hadn't studied, you had no idea how to do it. How you felt would be the exact same way that a kid today in 6th grade was called up to the whiteboard or the smart board or the hologram, whatever they've got. The feeling is the same. The props change.
Gotcha. What's your favorite thing about being a children's author?
I guess it's meeting the kids, because I'm a big kid at heart, and the kids are really silly, and they treat you like a rock star. I mean, I go to school sometimes and they'll have whole choreographed 300 kids will meet me with some song they've written. I went to one school, the orchestra was there, and they all had their cellos with lemon artwork on them. So they're lemon cellos they were playing. Kids stand in line hugging your book. When I wrote for adults, they never hug the book. Kids hug the book. And you get a lot of kids who, the way I write, I get a lot of kids who don't like to read. They sort of fall in love with reading because I write sort of fast-paced page turners, because I was a reluctant reader as a kid. So I know what that feels like. And they send the nicest letters. If I talk to a school, I'll get like a big envelope with all these hand-drawn illustrations of me and the characters from the books. It's pretty cool.
So how do you promote yourself as a children's author?
The best way to promote yourself as a children's author is to start doing school visits. And when I started out, and there's controversy about this, but I thought it was a marketing ploy. A lot of people do it to make money. You can make money charging honorariums, going into schools the same way, like, athletes in action, and all the kind of the scientists who come to schools and do presentations make their living doing that. So you can make some money doing that. But I decided early on that I would go to any school that bought X number of books. I think it was like 50 books, and paid my travel. And at first I was just doing New York and New Jersey and stuff, but I do a pretty good show because I used to do improv comedy. And your day starts with the librarians, and the librarian sets up the day, and you'll probably do like 3 assemblies. You got to put together a good show. So I was lucky that the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, they do a quarterly magazine. The first quarter I belonged, they had a whole article about how to do author visits to school. And it said, if you're an adult author now writing for kids, don't think you're going to read a chapter and entertain questions from the audience. You really have to develop a show. I have like a 30-minute version all the way up to an hour version of the show and I looked at the core curriculum for grades 3 through 5. I found some things about how to story mapping and how to write stories. So I built my presentation around something that was in the curriculum, because teachers and principals and librarians love it if what you're doing in your presentation is reinforcing what they're doing in the classroom. If you're just up there going, well, then I wrote, and then I wrote, then they're going to go, you're just wasting my time, and time is precious in schools. So I put together a really good show. Librarians liked it. They started talking to other librarians. The first 2 or 3 years, I sent out a brochure to every librarian in the tri-state New York area. Somehow I got that mailing list. I can't remember where I bought it. I bought a mailing list. I invested in that. I sent out direct mail pieces, free author visits. I sent out 5,000 brochures. I got 6 nibbles. And I knew from my days in advertising, that's pretty good for direct mail marketing. Direct mail marketing has a really bad return rate. So I did that for 3 years. By then, word has spread. Because if you do a good performance, schools are going to talk to other schools, and then it grew into where I was doing close to 100 to 200 school visits a year. And then when the books became very successful, the Random House was doing author tours. They don't do them so much anymore, and those are coordinated through bookstores. So you go to a town, and a bookstore in that town will sponsor you, and they'll put you out to schools. You don't get paid anything for those, but they sell books at all the schools you go to, and word spreads, and that's what you really want. You want to get remember, if you're writing for the upper elementary and probably even middle grade, the kids aren't the ones buying your books. It's usually their parents, their teachers, or their schools buying their books. So you've got to have a great presence in libraries and in schools.
Go ahead.
Once the kids fall in love with your books, then they'll start asking for them for Christmas, and the holidays and Hanukkah gifts. They'll say, "Oh, I want all 6 Limoncello books. I got to read them all." And the parents will say, "Yes," because any kid who wants to read, that's a present.
So at what point were you able to command a 50-book purchase? When you were
I think starting out, I said, because I had read all the SCBWI, it says you should always charge something. If you don't charge something, then you're just going to be a babysitter in some cases, and it's going to show that nobody does anything for free. The teachers aren't there for free. So I think I started out really like just by 25, because the books were hardcover and those get a little more expensive. And I also had faith in my books that once the kids saw my presentation and heard me do, because I do use like samples from the books to illustrate points I'm making, that they'd want more. And typically, if I sell 50 books the day I'm there, they'll sell another 50 books the next day. I meant to buy it, but my mother forgot to give me the form. So once it's a good entree in there. But yeah, then I got up to like 100 books, and now I'm charging an honorarium like most people do. And just because I've been doing it so long that it's like, I need to slow down a little bit. And I'm mostly focusing on, there's some schools and districts that will do 1 book, 1 school events, where every single kid, custodian, cafeteria worker, principal, teacher, bus driver, in the entire school, or sometimes the entire district, will read your book. So I just signed 4,000 book plates for a school that's I'm
Oh
going to
my
visit.
gosh.
Yeah. So it does grow, but it starts out, it takes a while, it takes a while to build. I've been doing it since 2008. Wow. So 14 years while I've been doing these school visits. Wow.
Wow. What's the
Yeah.
funniest thing that ever happened to you at school?
Oh, wow. A lot of funny stuff happens. I mean,
Kids are just crazy, aren't they?
yeah, they are. They get a little wiggly, and I'm trying to think. I'm so into this. It's like doing a show. It's like doing a stand-up act that I don't remember little details. One of the best things that ever happened were some of the kids who might have learning disabilities will come up to me and talk, like something in my book will have inspired them. And I see the teachers like, oh, like, and I say, no, it's fine. I love talking to this kid. There's one kid who talked to me about dogs. So I showed a picture of my dog, Fred, and we had a great conversation about dogs for like a half an hour.
Oh my
So that
God.
was fun. Yeah, it's fun. Kids are fun. I mean, it's hard to find like one really funny, wacky thing that happened, but it is a lot of fun.
Well, tell me a little bit about the collaborative process, like when you were working with Patterson. Um, what's the process like for people who are curious?
Oh, James Patterson is an idea machine, always has been. And there's a CBS Sunday Morning featurette about him. And he shows off the credenzas in his office, which, by the way, I modeled my office on his when we remodeled. But he opened up his credenza in there. He had 3 of them that were filled with file folders stacked up one against another. Each one of those was an idea for a book. The guy is just an idea machine. Probably goes back to his advertising days, because that's what we had to be, idea machines. And there's no way he can execute them all. So he sort of does it. He likens himself to like a showrunner in television. I think it's a little bit, because I became a creative director in advertising at the end of my career. And you get ideas like, I got this idea for 7-Up. Why don't you guys do something, blah, 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 blah. You give the idea. But with James Patterson, he will write a 30 or 40 page outline where all the twists and turns of the story are laid out, who the characters are, what's going to happen in chapter 1. We open in a comedy club. We see a boy sweating bullets. We see it's a young comedians contest. He's having trouble because he can remember the punchlines, but he can't remember any of the setups to his jokes. Chapter 2, where we now discover that this boy who's been bombing is in a wheelchair. And this is not so he lays it all out like that. Then I will write about 10,000. Our books are about 40,000 words long. So I'll write 10,000 words every month, and I'll send him pages. We call them the pages every month. I'll send him to him. Usually he likes to get stuff like on a Friday. He'll read it over the weekend. He'll call me up on Monday. Now, for anyone who's ever worked with an editor in a typical situation, you turn in your book and 2 months later, you might hear something about it. But with James Patterson, I turn it in on Friday. Monday, usually he's calling me up. And the best calls are, great, keep going, Chris. The worst ones are, do you have a pen and a pad of paper handy? Because that means he's got a lot of notes. So we go back and forth. I'll make the changes he asks for. We'll go back and forth 4 times. I'll finish basically the first draft of 40,000 words. Then he'll polish that, turn it into the final draft, and turn it in. Now, as we go on in a series like Treasure Hunters, there's 9 books in that series. He might say, what do you think is going to happen next, Chris? And I'll pitch him an idea like, well, I think maybe this time they go to Europe and it's all Middle Ages and blah, blah, blah. And I'll send him an outline and he'll send me back a better outline. So it's back and forth. There's a lot of collaboration that's involved. He allows us to put our own voice into whatever we do, and we have fun. And if it's fun, we do it again.
How does somebody get a gig like that? I mean, how does a writer, want?
Most of the names I recognize on his books are people I knew back at J. Walter Thompson Advertising. A lot of them are people he knew in advertising. But then he started doing these book shots. These were like these quick little like short story things. And he had so many. I suspect that his folks at Little Brown, which is his publisher, I suspect they keep their eyes and ears open for people who they think might be good co-authors with James Patterson. Because I know my current agent has some people who are writing projects with James Patterson, and they were never in advertising. So I don't know how. I guess one needs to have an agent who thinks that you might be right for this kind of co-authoring task.
Gotcha. For somebody who wants to co-write with somebody else, what are the advantages and disadvantages, pitfalls, things they should avoid, things they should be looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I write books now with my wife, which is kind of fun. We wrote one middle grade book together called Shine because she had the idea, and she is the first editor on everything I've ever written. I said, and she also is a book, I call them book on tape, recorded books performer. So she's been like living inside books for a long time. And I said, well, let's write this book together. So what we did was we sat down, we brainstormed and worked on an outline together for almost like 2 months. And then collaboration is great. When we talk to kids about collaboration, we always say, remember, for the first draft, there is no such thing as a bad idea, that nothing can shut collaboration down quicker than the word no. Like, no, that will never work. No, I tried that once. In fact, we try to write when we collaborate the way we used to do improvisational comedy, which is you say yes and to whatever your partner throws at you. You say, yes, it's warm in here. And you add something to that and you build on it. Now, when it gets down to the actual writing, in my case, because I can type 120 words a minute, and because I've been doing this so long, it's like I act it out in my head. And JJ, who I write with, my wife, is an actress, and she wants to act out the scene in the living room. So what we got to is kind of this is how we used to do advertising. In advertising, they team up a copywriter with an art director. So one's verbal, one's visual. They put you together. We used to sit in a room. We look at the bottom of each other's tennis shoes and bounce ideas back and forth and go, oh yeah, that's a pretty good one. And da-da-da happens and then da-da-da happens. Well, there would come a point where I'd say, all right, leave me alone for a second. And, kick the art director out, and I'd do a first draft of a script, and then he'd like, yeah, I like this part, but this part here, why don't we change that? And it would be really cool if we visually, all right. I write a second script. Then he go, okay, cool. Then he would start storyboarding, art directing the thing. So back and forth we'd go, but someone has to sit down and write first. So I would be, since I'm the typist in the family, I take what we had worked out and I say, all right, let me give you the first crack. And so I'll take a first crack, give it to JJ, and she'd go, well, and she'd start marking it up and the way she does when she edits stuff. And we would start acting out scenes. If we ever got to something where she wanted it one way and I was adamant and had to be another way, we'd say, there's something wrong with this scene because neither one of us is happy. So we go back and rework the whole thing. So it can be fun. You get, you're better together. We always tell kids that no one can whistle a symphony. It takes a whole orchestra to play it. So sometimes you can be better together than you could be by yourself. I know when I write with James Patterson, he pushes me into areas that maybe I wouldn't go myself. So yeah, there's pluses and minuses to both. There's also the part of being a writer where you see the whole thing in your head that you just want to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get this one down. And then there's the collaborative thing is fun too. So they're both fun.
So do you define it ahead of time before you ever start who's going to be the writer? I mean, the actual physical writer, or how does that work?
Well, I've only done the two
collaborations. Stepping on each other's toes.
With Jim, he's got it set up. This is the way he does it. He'll give you the outline. You send him the pages. He'll respond to the pages. You'll rework the pages. You'll send him more pages. So I'm always the one typing the manuscript. With JJ and I'm 120 words a minute. She's or by hand. Like Patterson writes by hand, believe it or not. He writes on a yellow legal pad with a pencil by hand. With a pencil, my gosh. And so
does he have someone type it, or does he type it?
Yeah, I think he's got like it's old school, take this down to rewrite, take it to the typist outside someone who can read his handwriting, who types things out. So yeah, that's real old school.
Well, let's talk about movies. One of your books got turned into a movie, and can you tell me about that? How that process came about? How did it happen?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's what typically happens because a buddy of mine and I, we wrote that Christmas movie too. What typically happens is I don't want to say low level, but a producer who's not like a name you would recognize stumbles upon your book, or in our case of the screenplay who wrote your manuscript, at a very, someone discovered actually Riley Mack at a bookstore and really liked it. And it was a small production company based, I think, out of Atlanta. So small production companies are good because they want to go sell it because they're going to make money if it gets produced. So they become like the salesperson. So this guy took Riley Mack to Nickelodeon because he had an in at Nickelodeon, and they really liked it. But they had just done a book by Gordon Corman, a friend of mine, called Swindle, which is a little bit of the same thing, sort of a middle school caper story, getting the bad guys, tricking them into doing stuff. And he said, yeah, this is really good, but we just did Swindle. And Mr. Lemoncello's Library is about to come out. It had not come out yet, but this producer had read that and said, well, I got this. This is something else he wrote. You like his writing. Why don't you read this? And the head of Nickelodeon took it home and he liked it. He started reading it out loud to his two daughters and they loved it. And so it wasn't too long after that we had a formal option on Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library for 1 year. I think we made like $300, something like that. You don't get much money on an option. And an option just means, all right, for a year or whatever period of time you define, no one else, I won't sell this idea to anybody else. And of course, that year option had a year to renew. So, an option to renew. So another $300, they got a second year. So I'm telling my mom, yeah, it's been optioned for a movie, Mom. That's great. It's great. You talk to your friends. Oh, yeah, it's been optioned for a movie. Every conference you go to, oh, it's been optioned for a movie. But the options that actually turn into movies are very few. CPAC was optioned for a TV show. The Crossroads, one of my ghost stories, was optioned for a movie. I have a lot of $100 and $200 checks in my bank account. But the people at Nickelodeon really liked it. And finally, we heard it went to the money people. That's when they give the green light that they've got a budget for it and they're going to do it, then you're pretty sure it's going to be made. So they took it and they took it away and they ran it. And I had nothing to do with the script. If I ever get another book optioned, I might have enough name recognition that I could say I'd like to be a producer on the movie, to have some input on the script, because they took it and they sort of turned it into a more of a Nickelodeon kind of a movie. And I loved it. I mean, it was great. It was great production values.
A lot of special effects.
A lot of special effects, looked great. Kids who weren't big readers loved it and they went out and bought the book. In fact, I asked Gordon Corman, I said, Nickelodeon did your movie. Do you have anything to do with the writing of it? He went, nope. Well, how'd that make you feel? He said, Chris, think of it as a 90-minute commercial for your book. And I think we did set sales records for Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's that month that it came out. And it's fun. I show clips and gets kids excited. And I did get to go to one day of filming, which was fun. And they were so afraid that I was going to be all upset that they changed so much that the producer came and met us at our hotel in Vancouver. And we were having coffee. They wanted to meet me first before I came to the set, because I think they wanted to find out if I was going to throw the fit. How dare you, what you've done to my book. Because when you sell your movie, you sell your movie. Someone likened an option or selling your book like when you sell your house. And the people who come in don't like the color you painted the walls. They don't like those window fixtures you put up. They don't like the window treatments. They don't like the appliances, but you sold them your house and they can do what they want with the interior, the exterior. They can plow up your garden that you spent 20 years planting and put in palm trees. So you've sold your house. So, but it was fun. I got to hang out on the set, and I think they found out I was a decent guy, and I wasn't, because I went through it so much in advertising. Everything I wrote got changed in advertising. So I got invited to the Hollywood premiere, which was exciting. And it really did. I mean, it was pretty cool. On Nickelodeon, they had a countdown clock for the movie's going to be on in 12 hours. And just the name Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library is being trumpeted everywhere. We did a special printing of the book with the cast on the cover, which is particularly in markets like Target and Walmart. Those are places where books are bought, where grandma is buying a Christmas gift for their grandson. And so those are valid venues for selling books. And those kind of ones, like the kid went, oh, I saw that movie, and they'll grab the book. So it was a good experience overall.
Well, as an author, what's most important to you?
Two things, I think. Number one, that I'm entertaining my audience, because I come from being a performer, that I'm not boring, that I always entertain my audience. and that I get to keep doing it. That to me is like, I don't care so much about the big advances and stuff. And I even told one of my agents that, and they went, "What? What?" I don't care about that. I just want to, because if the book's good, I have confidence that, advances are against royalties, that if the book's good and people like it, we'll earn some money down the line. But I just want to be able to keep writing.
So that's great. Anything else you want to add before we close?
Don't be boring. I will share what James Patterson taught me when we used to have a training program in advertising. I don't think anybody has the money to do that anymore. And he came in and gave this lecture once it was like everybody, creative people, account people, media people, research people, all the new hires. We were all together, like 20 or 30 of us, and we had different lectures every week. So James Patterson's going to come in now and talk to us about how to be creative. So he comes in, and back in those days, he had a big bushy beard, big old kind of curly bushy beard. Came into a podium. We're on Madison Avenue, big, office building, just like Mad Men, in the conference room. And he says, "All right, I'm going to teach you how to make $1 million a year in advertising. The secret is," before he could say another word, the door flies open and this knucklehead comes running into the room with a banana cream pie and slams it in James Patterson's face. Remember, he's got a beard, so he's got all this cream and crust and stuff and yellow gook just dripping down his beard. And we're all going, "That guy is so fired. He is going to be so fired." And Jim cleans himself up a little bit. He says, "All right, I just showed you how to make $1 million a year in advertising. Throw a pie in their face, and once you have their attention, say something smart." And I never forgot that lesson. That's why all of my stories, all of my commercials at first, all my stories start with some kind of boom, something to grab the reader's attention. And once you have their attention, they'll stick around for the exposition and to learn a little bit more. And, it's so many mysteries I read start out with, "I'm work in this small town where I run the donut shop that's also a dry cleaner. And I've been doing it for all these years." And, have somebody come in and, I don't know, have a donut explode or something, get my attention. And if you do that, I'll stick around for the rest of your story.